Hey, hockey fans, TBOS is 13-3 here with another top shelf guest. Riga, Latvia native, Shattuck St. Mary's alum, former Minnesota State Maverick, Vegas Golden Knight, Stanley Cup winner, and current Vancouver Canuck, Teddy Blueger. This episode is sponsored by Riverside Bike and Skate and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Mogi.
Hey, we are here again today at Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub in downtown St. Paul, Minnesota. Thanks so much, Tom and Kathy, for allowing us to use your North Star room. And we're excited to talk to Teddy. We met him at one of the beauty game leagues or league games, and he was gracious enough to agree to come on our podcast. So welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Good to be here.
We truly appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about where you grew up. Latvia, city of over 600,000 people, Baltic Sea. What was it like growing up in that area?
It was great. I think looking back on it now, Riga used to be a lot bigger. I think now the population's declined significantly. I think when I was growing up, it was probably right around 1 million people.
Wow.
So it's the population's declined, like I said. And then when I was 6 or 7, we moved to a suburb, which was right on the coast of the Baltic Sea. So we're growing up there. Summers were great. We were actually just back there not too long ago with my wife, my brother, seeing the family. So summers are awesome. Weather's great food. Winters, from what I remember, is a lot of outdoor rinks at the time, so we'd be playing a lot of hockey. Not didn't get quite as cold as here, but enough to keep the ice, and it'd be practice. And then my mom would take us playing outdoors, and we'd do all kinds of stuff. So a lot of time spent on the ice. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. Growing up on the sea, did you do any sports like sailing or outrigging or anything like that while you were there?
No, nothing crazy like that. I mean, my parents. We were in a lot of sports. My parents made me do swimming. Soccer was a big one. So the summers I'd spend playing soccer up until I was like 12, 13. And then tennis. We did, my mom would take us snowboarding. There's not like any mountains, but there was like probably something comparable to Buck Hill. So sometimes after practice, my mom would take us there and we'd go. So we were kind of like all over the place and playing all kinds of different sports all the time. So
were your parents athletes as well?
Not my mom. She probably could have been. She's pretty athletic, but just like the time that she grew up at wasn't really available to her. My dad played hockey growing up, probably till he was like 16, 17. So that's kind of how I got started a little bit too.
Okay, yeah. So when did you get started?
Pretty early on. So from right when I was about 3 years old. I mean, I don't even remember, but my dad, so when I was born, my dad was just playing like beer league, men's league, beer league.
So A-League.
Yeah.
Just down from the pros.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. But he was always, so he had his team and then he knew a bunch of guys that played. And so my mom would take me to some of his games, or we were just always around the rink. There was hockey stuff in the house, like sticks, equipment, all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of how it got started. Like I don't even, obviously don't even remember that time, but first time on skates was at 2.5, I think. And then started, kind of playing, I wouldn't say organized, but learning to skate at around 3 and stuff, and kind of went from there.
I've got a son who, when he reached a certain age, I felt was old enough that I could actually bring him into the beer league locker room. Mm-hmm. And I gave him the advice that what happens in that locker room stays in that locker room. Did you ever have any experiences like that with your dad where he finally said, okay, Teddy, you can finally come through the golden door?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I actually, we were just talking about it the other day because the rink that I grew up playing at, unfortunately, it's torn down, but it was an old Soviet rink. It was called the Ice Palace. So there was like our youth team there, and then there was like a pro team that played in the Latvian league at the time when I was growing up, which wasn't super high level, but it was a bunch of guys that had played, professionally at one point or another, and they were late 30s, kind of retired, but they had a locker room, and my dad was buddies with a bunch of those guys. So after practice, we'd stick around and watch their games, and my dad would bring me in their locker room, and they were hotboxing, and they're smoking and drinking beers and stuff like after the game in between periods. And it was just kind of a way for them, they weren't getting paid, but they were playing at a reasonably high level, still technically in a professional league, but so we were around them all the time. And then I guess the other one would have been, I think, when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, I'd always want to skate with my dad and his team. And when they would play, you know, like those guys looked so big and
sure.
you know, so good. So I was always asking him, like, let me stay on after our practice, because they would skate sometimes after our practice too. So I'd always ask him to let me stay on. And he was like, no, you're too small, too small. And then I reached a certain age and he was like, okay, fine. And I remember like that first time going on with them, and you know, obviously they kind of went easy on me, but as time went on, like, so those guys would kind of go hard against me. So it was fun. Yeah. Playing skating with those guys.
So you said we a couple of times. You have a brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's a hockey player. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah. So my brother, he's 4 years younger. Yeah, he played growing up too. Obviously we never played on the same team just because the age difference, but he ended up coming over here. He played at Shattuck, and then he went to Lake State, played a little bit at Fairbanks, and then played a year in Pensacola in the Southern Pro League, and then now he's coaching in Minnesota. So yeah,
nice,
yeah.
Doing very well himself.
Yeah.
Okay, so you gradually, you know, get the skates. You're starting to play. Your dad says you're big enough to skate with him. You eventually get good enough where you're playing with some pretty spectacular teams over in Latvia. What started to bloom for you? Was it a game where you're starting to connect the dots on the ice, or did you have speed? What was happening?
I don't know. I think at the time, maybe when I was like 12, 13, I thought I was pretty good. I thought I was a pretty good skater. I was doing well, like, against my peers back home in Latvia. And, so I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then by the time I got to Shattuck a year or two later, I realized I was one of the worst guys on the team at Shattuck. So it was kind of a rude awakening that way.
Experience.
Yeah, for sure. But it's, you know, it's good it came at that age where I still had a lot of time to grow and improve. So, yeah, at the time when I was playing back home, like, the level of competition is not very high. I mean, if you look at, like, you know, even like the under 18 or the World Juniors teams, there's usually like a handful of good players per age group, maybe. Sure. And those are the guys that end up playing, you know. So I think in terms of like World Juniors, like, Latvia always struggles to compete, right? Because they don't have that many good players, that many players to choose from. It's a small country. But they can put together, you know, a national team that's like somewhat competitive. So.
Okay.
So let's go back to your youth. We jumped a little bit to Shattuck, but your youth, you played in a league that was started by Helmut Balderas. Yeah. He was a legendary Russian Latvian, but played in Russia. Yeah. And actually, he played for a very short time with the Minnesota North Stars, one of the first Russians to come over and play in the league. So did you ever get to meet him?
Yeah, I met him a couple times. So his name... The team I played for was called Balderas Hockey School. That was the name of the youth team. And they had some older teams. So I'm a 94 birth year. I think their first teams were like 85, 86 birth years, like, so a little older. And then it kind of folded, and then they kind of brought it back around the time when I was growing up. But the coaches were completely different. He was never very involved. He would come, once a year to take the team picture, and
name only,
kind of like, you know, it's like, it is very recognizable name. You know, he played for the Soviet team, and everyone knows who he is. I met him a couple times, like, outside the rink, just like, you know, with my dad running into him. My dad obviously knew him, so I know him a little bit, but yeah, it's not really how you think, where he's like involved in like day to day and all this kinds of stuff. It was more just like his name was kind of, the team was named, I guess, after him in a way. But he wasn't really too involved. So,
okay.
As you're growing up in Latvia, did you have players that you looked up to? You know, and if so, who were those guys?
So I guess the Latvian guys at the time were Sergei Zoltak, who actually played here too. Sandis Ozlinch, Carlos Skrastins, Artur Zirbe. But my favorite player growing up was always Peter Forsberg. Oh. So that's, you know, that's who I followed, and kind of he was my favorite player. Yeah.
Well, you picked a doggone good one.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
A good one.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think about your youth hockey program development? How does that compare to what you see going on here with the U.S. youth?
I mean, I think it's just a much smaller scale. I think it's more polished, more organized. I think, especially in Minnesota, it's like everyone plays, everyone. It seems to be like access is easier to get to. You know, there's more rinks, there's more opportunity. I mean, it's expensive everywhere. It's probably, I would say, probably more expensive back there. Just the ice times and getting the gear and all that kind of stuff. So a little less accessible maybe, but I think here it's more polished, like the system, and, you know, you got the high school teams, and I think the way it's structured too is like, you know, the high school tournament, everyone wants to be in that, right? It's like such a big deal. So it makes kids really motivated, you know, to get to that level. And so I think it's a little bit different. I think it's hard to compare just because, I mean, I think if you look at Latvia as a country, I mean, if I had to guess, there's probably like 15 rinks total, maybe, okay. You know,
yeah.
But here there's like, you know, a rink in every town. I don't know how many rinks there are in the state, but probably a lot, right? So,
thousands.
Yeah. So
at the age of 15, you leave home to come to Minnesota, Shattuck St. Mary's. How did that occur? And what was that like, leaving home at the age of 15 to a foreign country, let alone?
Yeah. So we were kind of, when I was growing up, like you kind of realize that like the older you get, the level is not as high. And so all the players that, you know, like Zemgus Gergensons, who plays for Buffalo, he's my age.
Yep.
So I played against him growing up, played against Elvis, who's the goalie in Columbus.
Leakins,
yeah,
yep.
He's the same age. So he left. He went to Switzerland. Zemgus went out east to play juniors. So around like that 13, 14, 15-year-old, like if you're good, you usually go somewhere else, like Sweden, Finland, Russia. So we had, I had a couple of tryouts. I had a tryout with like the Red Army team in Moscow. I went to Moscow Dynamo for like a summer camp. So we're kind of looking like right around that time, like 13, 14 other places to go play at a higher level. And then my dad has two sisters who both ended up coming, and they live out in New York City. So they had mentioned, you know, there's these boarding schools out east here where you live in the dorms, you know, they have hockey. You should check these out. So we kind of looked into them. We had scheduled a couple visits to go see them in December, and probably a couple weeks or maybe a month before we were supposed to schedule to come out to the US and look at these schools. I was home after school, and we're about to go to hockey practice, and I was having lunch, and they were showing a rerun of Pittsburgh playing the Wild on TV. And they did this segment on Shattuck and how Sid's coming back to Minnesota. So I feel like, so that's how we found out about Shattuck. And then they showed this thing about how many NHL guys Shattuck has produced and all this stuff. And so I was with my mom, and my mom just wrote it down on a sheet of paper, like the name of like Shattuck St. Mary's, you know, and then we ended up looking it up like later that night and just looking, and it basically just set up a visit, and ended up coming out here and loved it. And then, yeah, that was probably the best place to go.
Wow, it certainly
15.
was.
So did your parents come with, or did they just ship you across the ocean?
They basically,
and you're on your own?
They came with me, dropped me off, made sure I was like set up in the dorms, and
Like there really was a place for you to live.
yeah,
That was nice.
pretty much, yeah. So they came with me, but I mean, I honestly, like, I don't remember it being hard or anything. Like I loved it. I thought it was awesome. It's like you're with your buddies all the time. You're going to school. Like where I was going to school back home, it's like a lot of my classmates weren't that into sports. Like they weren't, you know, so all these guys that I'm with, they love hockey. They're watching highlights. We're watching games. They're talking about it. You know, they all want to play at a high level. So we have so much in common right away. So I just thought it was awesome. Like I just, you know, and like everyone gets there, you know, 9th grade is usually, you know, some people come 8th, 10th grade, but a lot of people come 9th grade. So everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's new, away from family and their friends. And, you know, I played with guys from anywhere from Sweden to LA to Minnesota that were, you know, we're all on the same team. So, I think it was really fun, and it was just like you're with your buddies 24/7. So
was there any type of language barrier for you?
I mean, not really. I wouldn't say. The school I went to back home was called an international school.
Okay.
So it was all, everything was in English. All the teachers were from like either England or US or Canada. So it was all English speaking. And, everyone that went there was either, embassy workers' kids or, you know, foreigners' kids. And then probably like a quarter of like a local population, basically.
So obviously, Sidney Crosby went there, Jonathan Toews went there, Zach Parise went there. Any other famous guys that you played with when you were there?
So when I was at Shattuck, probably the most famous would be Mikey Riley.
Okay.
So we played together there for a year. McKinnon was there at the same time. We never played on the same team for whatever reason. He was a year younger, and obviously he was probably good enough to play with the older teams, but that's just how they do it, right? So It's like, Tom Ward knows what he's doing, and it's worked out pretty well for him.
I would say
for
so.
Nate as well. So, he was there at the same time. Didn't get a chance to play with him. When I just got there, when I was in 9th grade, Eric Hollow was there. I'm probably blanking on maybe one or two, but a lot of Division I players and guys that played pro and in different places. So
you certainly landed in the right spot then.
Thinking about some of those guys, there's quite a few Stanley Cups between those guys that he mentioned.
Yeah, but the last one that was won was probably the most important to Teddy.
Yes. Yeah, and we're going to get there. Well, he's one of those guys.
Absolutely,
one of those
he is.
Stanley Cup guys. Absolutely. So, wow.
Okay.
So, after you graduate, you go right to Division I, Minnesota State at Mankato. No juniors, no nothing. Did you have a chance to go to juniors? What was your thought process?
It was kind of an interesting thing because it's like when I'd come over here, I had no idea what college hockey was really. I knew a little bit major junior. There's been Latvian guys that have played major junior before, that were older than me. So I'd heard about that a little bit, knew a little bit about that, but didn't know much about college. So 9th, 10th, like 11th grade. By the time I get to 11th grade, it's like half the guys on our team at Shattuck are committed to all these schools, and like you're starting to kind of learn a little bit, and you're maybe getting recruited a little bit, and then we didn't really like looking back on it. My dad and I, like, we had no idea what we were really doing, or we was getting recruited a little bit by a couple schools, and then we went to visit Mankato, and it seemed like a great spot. We liked it. They at the time it was Troy Judding was the coach. Had some meetings with them. They were really kind of recruiting us hard, and no one else really was. So it seemed like, okay, well, everyone else on my team's committed, right? This seems like the thing to do, right?
Right way to go, right?
Yeah, the right way to go. So we're like, so ended up committing there in 11th grade. And then as far as juniors, I did have a chance to go to juniors, but it was kind of a decision. In my head, I wanted to get to college as soon as possible because that was kind of like the next level. And I was like, I want to be better than these guys that are going to juniors. And so that was my mindset, but that was a decision that we kind of made with the staff at Mankato and the coaching staff. And then obviously before I came in my freshman year is when Judding got let go, I think, and they brought in Mike Hastings. And so that was kind of a decision we made with him. So, yeah.
Okay, so I want to get this straight. You come from Latvia, and you're a good player. You come to Shattuck St. Mary's, and in your words, you were one of the worst players.
Yeah.
But by your junior year, you sign a commitment to play D1 hockey.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened in 3 years? You sprout wings or what?
No, I think like I just got better. I think I was like I said earlier, it was like really humbling for me to come over here, and it's like I go from being one of the best players to one of the worst.
Motivating for you.
So yeah, a little bit. It's like, okay, like, I think my mom says when we first got there, and it's like the first couple weeks was like tryouts and these skates, and she said when she saw how good everyone else was, she started crying. So yeah, so I was like, I didn't realize it was that bad, but apparently, yeah. So yeah, I think Shattuck was just such a good place for that. Like we more or less had, I don't want to say unlimited, but access to a lot of ice time. It's right there. It's a 100-yard walk. As far as like the gym and the facilities, I think they've upgraded them since then, so they're even better now. But you can put in the time. You play all season. The season gets done end of March, I think early April, and then you have all the ice you want in the spring, whatever. So you're just on the ice a lot, and you're able, you're surrounded by players that are better than you, so you're always reaching for that net, for them. So that's kind of pushing you. So I think it's just kind of a combination of things, and it just kind of worked out that way. And like by the time I got to 11th grade, we were on the prep team, and like I said, it's like everyone else was committed. It's like you look at the guys on the team, it's like everyone's going to all these schools, and it's like, so again, I'm kind of chasing that a little bit, probably without without even knowing it.
So you're obviously among like-minded individuals. Okay, you all have the same goal, and I can imagine that. You look at these guys; they're better than you, at least in your mind, and you're seeing what they're doing to get better.
Yeah,
and then you start doing that, and you start to see some improvement, and that kind of changed everything for you, didn't it?
For sure, yeah, for sure, it changed a lot. And it's like, I think when when you're surrounded by people that are better than you and are where you kind of want to get to, you just naturally, like even subconsciously start, like mimicking their behaviors a little bit, like you said, and just kind of reaching for that next level and working. And, you have a clear vision and a clear goal of where you're trying to get to. Right. So, I think it's just kind of all that combined. And then obviously, being at Shattuck, you see all the guys on the wall, you see, all the jerseys, all the history there and stuff, the people that came before you and what they did. So you're always trying to like measure up, I guess, against them.
So what was your goal at that point?
I mean, in my head, my goal was always like to get to the NHL.
Okay.
That was my goal. From as long as I can remember, that's like the only thing I wanted to do. It was like playing the NHL, being an NHL player, obviously, win the Stanley Cup, but the first one would be get to the NHL. So in looking back on it, like weirdly in my mind, like there wasn't really like any doubt that it was going to happen. I think it took way longer than I thought and hoped for, but I don't think at any point I was like, I really felt like it wasn't going to happen. You know what I mean?
Oh, I love the positive attitude.
And it was a fair amount of time.
Yeah, it was a long time.
You got drafted your senior year of high school. So you played that year. You played 4 years for Mankato. Then you played parts of 4 seasons with Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. You played a little bit after your senior year of college, and then 2 full seasons, and then another partial.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So it's
so it wasn't until my first game was when I was 24. So
that's
I think I was obviously hoping. Yeah, really late. I was hoping to play a little earlier, but that's kind of how it worked.
Hey guys, give me a call.
Yeah. So.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Let's go back real quick to high school to the D1. What did Mankato see in you? I mean, what did they see in you as what they needed for their team?
I guess I don't know. That might be a better question for them. I think.
Go ahead, make something up.
Yeah,
make it really good though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, like the big appeal was like the conversations that I had with them was like it was going to be an opportunity for me to come and play right away, and it wasn't going to be, like the team kind of when I was going in there, wasn't the best. They weren't doing that well, right? So I saw it as an opportunity to play, you're in the WCHA playing against the Gophers in North Dakota and Wisconsin, all these, and it's like if I can play against them right away, the idea was that would help me grow a lot and stuff. So that was kind of, I guess, the mindset going into it. And obviously it was a little like I don't know if I'd say I'm a late bloomer, but I wasn't like physically very strong or like very developed when I was 18. So it was a little maybe intimidating at first going up against guys, 22, 23, whatever. Sure. Some teams have older guys. I know at Mankato, we had some older guys when I was there. So even in practice, you're going up against guys that are physically significantly stronger than you. Yeah. So, so that was kind of the mindset going in.
Well, obviously you didn't let anything deter you. You still had that mindset where I'm going to play in the NHL, and no was not in your vocabulary at the time. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I had some rough years. Freshman year wasn't bad. Sophomore year was tough. I think I only had 4 goals that year, and then kind of came back stronger the next year and the next year. So, I think I remember even like having conversations with like Mike Hastings where, I was drafted fairly high that I really wasn't expecting to be drafted that high. Like even going into the draft, like you looking back at some of the stuff, like we had no idea. Like I was ranked, I don't know what I was ranked in like the central scouting stuff, but not that high. And obviously we'd hoped to get drafted. My dad and I weren't sure if we were even going to go to draft. We didn't really have an agent. But we had this guy who was an agent call us and was like, hey, you should come to the draft with me. So we went with him, got drafted, kind of head spinning, all this stuff going on. We're like, this is great. And then, he didn't even end up being my agent or anything. He just like took us to the draft. I don't know if that was like a recruiting pitch or whatnot, but, but
wasn't the right fit though.
Yeah, it wasn't the right fit. We had hardly spoken to the guy after that, but, So we ended up going to the draft, and going into it, I was like, I could be drafted, third round to not drafted at all. So we were obviously pretty nervous, and then getting drafted second round was like pretty exciting, and your head spinning, and the draft was in Pittsburgh. You're drafted by Pittsburgh, and it's like,
yeah.
So it's like just a lot going on, and then like development camp and all this stuff, and everything's new. You go to college, everything's new again. But yeah, so by the time I was like my junior year, I think Billy Guerin was actually the assistant GM in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And I remember it was like along the lines of like having these conversations with Hastings where he was like, I don't know if he was making this up or if he was having these conversations with Billy, but he's like, I'm talking to Billy and he's not even sure they want to sign you. Like, you're not, you got to pick it up and this and that. So it was kind of like a wake up call. So then, I think that was kind of like a kick in the butt that maybe, I needed at the time, and to really step up kind of the work ethic and try and improve that. In my head, I was like, I'm going to make it no matter what, but it's like, I really got to pick it up a little bit. So it was kind of like some rocky times, but it's like, that's how Mike is. Like, he's very, very straightforward and very brutally honest. So I think he can be really hard on you, which I think at the time was maybe not my favorite, but I think looking back on it now, like, you learn a lot of valuable stuff, and just almost more so about life than even just hockey. So
I was gonna keep touching on your draft. You're, like you said, second round, number 52 overall, the third highest Latvian drafted ever, behind your buddies Zemgus Girgensson and Sandis Ozolinsh. So that's quite a feather in your cap, I would say.
Yeah, I guess in a way. I mean, there hasn't been a ton of guys drafted, so but yeah,
a lot of goalies from
Latvia. Decent amount of goalies. Yeah, and I mean, I think going into the draft, like Zemgus was ranked really high. He was doing really well, and so he was kind of. I was talking to a guy when I was back home, and he was like, yeah, I remember like the draft, and like Zemgus, he had all this hype. He was playing in the USHL, I think, at the time, and everyone knew he was going to go high, and he went like 12th overall or something like that. And then you got drafted second round. I never even heard of you. Like, I didn't know you. I was like,
thanks, buddy.
Yeah. But I was like, I mean, yeah, it's true. It's like, like I feel like I could have just as easily not been drafted or drafted 7th round. And for whatever reason, that's kind of how it happened. So,
wow. We're going to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors. Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine has been committed to the healthcare needs of patients in western Wisconsin since 1954. The orthopedic surgeons and athletic trainers serve many area schools. Their success and reputation as an outstanding orthopedic clinic can be attributed to the teamwork of friendly, knowledgeable physicians and staff. Mogi.
So you mentioned Coach Hastings, and he really turned that program around in Mankato. I mean, you guys won 2 WCHA championships while you were there, and obviously been to a couple of Final Fours. Just unbelievable with that program. Now he's at Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's been down for quite a few years. What do you think he's got? What's the Hastings effect going to be like in Wisconsin?
I mean, I honestly think he'll do great. Like, I wouldn't bet against him. I think he's been successful everywhere he's been. I think in Mankato, like, he did such a good job, which, just changing the culture and the expectations of ourselves. And from, when I started there by the time I left, like, the expectation was nothing short of like winning, regardless of who we're playing against. The goal is to win. Which I don't know if that was the case. That was always the case before he came. And I just think, he did a great job with that. Obviously, the staff he had around him, Todd Knott, who's great. Darren Blue was there at the time. So all those guys, the trainers, and he really made it kind of like a more or less a professional setting where we had, gave us the resources that we needed to get better, and they renovated the locker room and put in a new gym and all this kind of stuff. And, kind of started treating us like professionals, but it was also, there was a much higher expectation of us as well that we kind of had to learn to handle. And, I think he'll do great at Wisconsin. I mean, I think obviously it's a big school, so he's got more resources, probably more stuff available. I think recruiting's probably a little bit easier, I would think. And I think with what I've seen, like with the transfer portal, it seems like right away he's able to kind of make that transition and get the guys in that he wants. And So I think that'll help him as well. So, I mean, I think he'll do great. I don't think it'll take him a long time to figure it out. I think he sets the tone early, right away. And, you know, guys either buy in or those that don't just aren't going to be there very long. So, I think he'll, you know, once he gets all the guys that'll buy in and be willing to work, I think they'll be really good.
One quick question, probably before we move on to pro career, and that is, when you're at Mankato, which college battle was the toughest?
That's a good question. I think it's a little bit tough just because the conference has switched. I mean, I think playing the Gophers was always big for us because that you know, that's the big school. So it's like we always kind of want to make sure we're ready for that one. And we had some tough losses, but also some great wins against them. I think we always struggled against St. Cloud when I was there. That was the one team I don't know if we beat while I was at Mankato, and obviously get to know some of those guys that we played against. Now it's a little different looking back. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those two, I mean, I think as far as like in our conference in the way, what is the CCHA now? I think we had some good battles against Bowling Green. They're always tough, hard to play against. Michigan Tech. Same, like pretty gritty team.
Yeah.
Worked hard to play against. So, and some of those rinks like up in Northern Michigan, it's like the glass doesn't have any give. So it's like when you get hit, it's like getting hit in a brick wall. So I always remember that. It was like Bowling Green had that, Michigan Tech, Lake State, like all those teams like that. So yeah.
Vivid memories getting crushed.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Let's move on from college now. You get drafted, you finish your senior year. How does that transition occur now to the pro level? Do the Penguins call you and say, hey, your college career is over, get your butt over here? Or how does that work?
I mean, more or less, yeah. I mean, I was a senior, right? So I had no eligibility left. So the Penguins basically offer you an entry level deal and you take it. And I think mine ended up being 2 years. So right after college, I went on a tryout to Wilkes-Barre and played some games there to finish out the year, and then came back the next year on a 2-year deal. So, yeah.
Now, on the 2-year deal, was that a two-way contract, or was it strictly an AHL contract, or how did that work?
That was a 2-way contract, yeah. So that was just an entry level. I think it was pretty standard.
Did you ever get any call-ups in those first 2 years?
I did, I think. So it would have been 16, 17, 18. I think 17, 18, I got a call up. Yeah, so I actually remember this well. We were playing in Providence, and I was on the way to morning skate, and I get to the rink, and the coach wants to talk to me, so I kind of figure what it means. And, he's like, you're getting called up to Pittsburgh. The team's in Dallas. They'll send you a flight right now. So then I get on I was like really nervous, kind of freaking out, right? So I was like, so the team calls me, whatever, we got you. So I take a car service to Boston, fly to Dallas, get there that night, show up to the rink in the morning. And I'm kind of like, the way he made it sound, like he didn't explicitly, the coach in Wilkes-Barre didn't say I was explicitly playing, but he's like, they got some injuries. So I was kind of like obviously hopeful that I was playing. So then I show up to the rink in the morning, and I'm not in the lineup, but at that point I'm just happy to be there. And obviously, like around all these guys. So I'm pretty nervous and just kind of go through pregame skate and all that. And I ended up being up for probably 6 or 7 games, and I didn't play any of them. And then I got sent down, and then nothing worked out the rest of the year. So, I was up for probably 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks, just kind of taking warm-ups and, hoping to get a chance, but that didn't end up happening.
So when you finally get to Pittsburgh, though, you get to play with Sidney Crosby, you get to play with Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and your owner is Mario Lemieux, a Hall of Famer. So yeah. What did you get from those guys just being around them on a regular basis daily? Yeah,
I mean, a lot. I think, Sid's the best. Like I just always remember like that time when I got called up, like, I show up to the rink and he comes out of his way and just says, shakes your hand, says hi, like just, obviously we have the connection through Shattuck and stuff, but he just, it's crazy that he's the best player in the world, and here he is like asking me questions about the season, about this and that. Is my dad coming? It's like, so he just like, and he does that with everyone. So it's like right away kind of like eases you in a little bit, and you feel more and more comfortable. So, I think I was fortunate to have a great relationship with him. And then obviously as I start playing there, getting to know him better and all the guys, and pretty much my whole time there, I ended up sitting next to him in the locker room.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. So it was just a lot of, like stories, and just watching him and the way he handles things, how he treats other people, whether it's media, teammates, staff on the team. Just his whole mindset and how he thinks about the game. And, like when we're getting dressed in Pittsburgh, they have a TV on in the locker room, and on the TV they have clips of the other team's goalie, and just some goals he gave up and this and that, and just like he's so detailed that he notices the tiniest little things. And same with his gear. It's like if it's off by half an inch, he's like, no, it's wrong. You know what I mean? And he'll tinker with it. And like, I'm sure it drives the equipment guys nuts, but he'll tinker with it. And it's like, no, it's not right. They'll go back, fix it, bring it back. He's like, no, that's not it. Just like stuff like that. So he's very, very detailed, but awesome guy. So it's crazy to think that it's like one of the best players of all time. And somehow I ended up, sharing a locker room with him for so long. And, it was a real pleasure. So
let's talk about him just a little bit longer, but he's famous for one particular piece of gear.
Yeah.
You want to share anything you know about that with our audience?
I mean, it's a miracle that thing's still together. A lot of stitching and sewing over the years, and I mean, I guess it's worked out for him pretty well. So
Absolutely.
I just feel bad for the guys that have to work on it, but I guess they know what they sign up for, right, at this point. So, he's funny about stuff like that, and just like very, very particular. And but he has changed a lot of stuff. Like he had a stick. It was a 2-piece from like when he first came in the league, and he would have it, and it's so bad. It like has no curve. It's just like a completely straight blade, and just terrible. And now he has like a little bit of a curve that's a little better. But guys would always joke, like, Sid, you'd actually be good if you had a curve on your stick, stuff like that. So, and he loves that stuff. Like he takes it well, and he just loves just sitting in the room and guys hanging out and telling stories. And so actually, like that COVID year when media wasn't around in the room, that was great for that. So
because you guys could actually open up then and really talk and chirp each other a little bit and have a little bit of fun in the locker room.
Yeah,
kind of like back in the day when your dad played, right?
Yeah,
that was locker room days.
Yeah, a little bit, because now it's like when media come in, obviously guys get undressed and try to get out of there, and some of the guys are stuck doing media, some of the guys are going into the gym, or kind of, so everyone kind of splits up a little more versus everyone kind of sit around. And actually that year we had 2 separate locker rooms. So it'd be like, for the games, there would be like 7 or 8 guys that would be in a room, like basically down the hall, and then you get dressed and then you come in the main locker room. So it was weird, but we'd always, like after games, just like, have some beers there and like off to the side, and no one would come in, no coaches would walk through or anything like that. So it was nice. Yeah.
Sitting around having some hockey pops.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So you got this call up, you play in the A for a couple of years. Tell our listeners a little bit of the difference between what the AHL and the NHL is, as far as like what the like travel is like, where differences between how you get to travel in the NHL as compared to the AHL, and the equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the AHL is, I think, everything by bus. It's, I think, on the East Coast, there's a lot of teams there in the Northeast. So I think our longest bus trip was maybe, that I can remember, would be Toronto, which was 6 hours. But you're playing, a lot of times on the weekends, you're playing 3 games in 3 days. So we'd go to like Providence on Friday, then we'd go, Syracuse Saturday night, and then Bridgeport would be like the afternoon game on Sunday. So it's like, you're playing Providence, then you got like a 3-hour whatever bus ride to the next city, and then you're getting in at 2 a.m. and then you wake up and either go to the rink or have some stuff at the hotel and then play that night and the next night. So you're always on the bus kind of doing that. So it's, obviously it's a little harder on your body as far as just like the recovery tools. Some of the away rooms aren't as well as equipped as in the NHL, so you don't have access to as much recovery stuff. Just a lot of time on the bus, which was also fun in the same way. But yeah, just kind of you're really grinding sometimes to make sure you're ready to go and this and that. And as far as everything else, obviously in the NHL everything's pretty much top of the line, right? You go on, you pull your car up to the plane, get on the plane, you fly, which obviously gets hard too. It's like you get some long trips, changing time zones and that, but you get treated really well as far as hotels, meals, all that stuff's always provided and taken care of. And you don't play any 3-and-3s. Obviously, the most would be a back-to-back. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the NHL is the best of the best and everything, and I guess that's part of the allure of it too, I guess, in a way.
Plus the contracts are a little different, right?
Yeah. The contract.
Add a couple zeros to the end of your NHL contract compared to the A.
Usually, yeah. So that's always nice as well. But I mean, I think when I look back at my time in Wilkes-Barre, like it was great. We had smaller towns. Obviously, you're not going to LA and you're not going to all these other places, but it's just we had a great group of guys. Everyone's kind of more or less younger at the time, so like the town Wilkes-Barre is a little different. It's got its own character, but we just kind of made our own fun, and all those bus trips and time spent together on the road was just a lot of great memories, and obviously still keep in touch with a lot of those guys I played with there.
Any pranks you can tell us about on this show that happened on those bus trips?
Any pranks? I don't know about pranks, but I remember one of my so when I first got there, even after college, so the captain there was at the time Tom Kostopoulos, who'd had a long career, played in the NHL, and a lot of the trips in the minors, like if the trip I think is less than 2 or 3 hours, it's a day trip. So you skate at home in the morning, and then you show up to the rink at 1, and then you bus to the away game that day. So one of my first games, we'd always play Hershey. You end up playing the same teams, like. I think 1 year we played Hershey 20 times. Oh, so we play
each other pretty well.
So you play like 2 preseason games. It'd be like 12 regular season. Then we ended up having like a 7-game series with them in the playoffs. So we're pulling up to the rink at Hershey, and his thing was, I didn't know this at the time, but all of a sudden he starts like screaming at the top of his lungs, like belting this song that he's listening to. And I guess like on those trips, like when we pull up to the game, whatever's in his headphones, like a minute before we pull up to the rink, he starts singing out loud for the whole bus to hear.
Did he have a good voice?
No, terrible voice, terrible voice. But I was just, I kind of like scared me for a second. I was like, what's going on? Kind of looking around, but it's obviously everyone else is used to it. I had just gotten there. And then I remember my first game in Binghamton, which is like, I don't if you guys ever seen the rink, it's smaller than normal. So like the neutral zone's like tiny in there. Oh. And I remember just going out for warm-ups my first game, and we had Tom Sestito was on our team at the time, and I'm supposed to be playing on a line with him, and like literally, and the fans, like the rink is tiny, so it's like packed, and like the fans are like right above you, and the whole time he's standing, the whole warm-up, he's standing by our bench and just chirping fans like over the glass, and there's guys like reaching over the glass and like screaming at him, and he's like chirping back. And I think Binghamton at the time, they had like Stortini or someone like that, and I was just like, this is unbelievable, like where am I, and they're like a couple minutes in, they fight, and it's like, and I was like, yeah, but,
welcome to the AHL.
Yeah.
Oh man, go ahead, Mo.
All right, let's give another shout out to a sponsor, Riverside Bike and Skate, Eau Claire's hockey headquarters, which is the oldest hockey store in the state of Wisconsin. Buy hockey gear from the people that play and know the game, and don't forget about their bicycle sales and service, as well as your paddle sports center for kayaks and canoes.
Let's talk about now you make the jump from the AHL permanently to the NHL. That was during the middle of a season. You get the call up. What changed this time that you showed the Pittsburgh Penguins that you are worthy of playing alongside Sidney Crosby?
I don't know if much changed. I honestly think I was ready for the opportunity the year before, but it just never came, right? It's like, I think in those times, a lot of times you just have to have a bit of luck or good fortune, like as far as like timing and working out. So they had, they had an injury that just happened at the right time for me, and I got called up. And I was actually out here. We were on All-Star break with Wilkes-Barre, so I flew out to Minnesota for a couple of days to visit my girlfriend, who's now my wife. So we were out here during All-Star break, seeing her, and then they called, my agent called me. He's like, hey, they have some injuries, whatever, they're calling you up. So I flew from here to Pittsburgh, and then the next night we played against Tampa. And that first game, I remember it pretty well. I was pretty nervous, sweating, because I knew it was at that point I was 24, so I had to make good on this chance. And the first game went okay, not bad, not great. And then we had a couple of days off before the next game, and we were playing Ottawa at home. And I was like, I don't know if I played well enough to stay in. If this guy comes back, from his injury, I might not play. He didn't come back, or someone else got hurt. I forget exactly what happened, but I ended up playing the second game and scored on my first shift. So Coley gave me a great pass between the legs, and it's just I haven't scored on the shot like that, basically my whole life. So it was, I feel like it was just God just gave me that chance and allowed me to score. And, so it happened like that. So then I scored and played a pretty good game. So then it's okay, well, I played well enough to stay in for the next game. And then the next game we go up to Toronto on a back-to-back, and somehow I end up scoring again. And it's so I scored 2 in my first 3 games, not even playing that well, but it's but when you score, it's kind of hard to take you out. Right. So then, it just kind of, happened like that. And then early on where I, scored a couple goals, got a couple points, and then that was just enough to just keep me afloat, I think, the rest of that year, more or less. So, yeah.
Have you had any significant injuries that have kept you out of the lineup for a while?
Probably the longest would be I broke my jaw. It would have been January of 22.
Oh,
that was probably the longest. Yeah.
And how'd that happen?
I got hit, and then kind of got hit in the head, and then smashed my head into the glass. So, so I think I missed I don't know how many games I missed, probably 15 to 20, somewhere in there.
That's
2 months.
The old wired up thing and milkshakes.
No, so fortunately it didn't wire me, and got into surgery a couple hours later. So I wasn't wired, but a couple plates on this side, couple plates on this side. So it works really well now. But,
how about the chiclets?
Yeah, I had 1 tooth missing, which that was when I was in the minors, and it wasn't very pleasant. But then once they took it out, I thought it was a cool look, So I rocked it for a while, and then a couple months before our wedding, I got it fixed. So that's good. Yeah.
So you were talking to a higher level within the future family that said you needed to get it fixed.
It's been a couple of years at that point, and it's I was sick of people asking about it, and I was over the phase. At first it's kind of cool. You get the hockey player look that people always think of, and then after a couple of years, it gets a little old. So yeah.
Well, you got a couple nicks around your chin and one around your eye, so I think you still got the hockey cred going for you.
A little bit, yeah.
I would say
it's never pleasant when it happens, but
right, it'll heal, right?
Yeah,
that'll go away. So after 4 seasons with Pittsburgh, last spring you're traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. How'd that work out for you?
I think in the end it worked out pretty good. I think, it was interesting timing. I think I wasn't really, you never know what'll happen around the trade deadline. I was in the last year of my deal, so you always kind of have it in the back of your mind. But when it actually happened, it was pretty surprising, a little shocking maybe, and just completely new experience too. So it's you don't really know what to do, what to expect. It was crazy circumstances too. We're on our father's trip with Pittsburgh, so my dad's with me. So we get to we're playing Nashville, and then the next game's in Tampa. So we fly to Tampa, and we're in the hotel lobby about to go up in the elevator to our rooms, and Brian Burke pulls me aside, and he's like, "Hey, come up to my room. I need to talk to you." And this is the day before the trade deadline, I think. So he's like, you can bring your dad if you want. So so we go, my dad and I would go drop our stuff off and go to his room, and it was him and Sully, and they were like, we're going up in the elevator. I was like, well, they're probably trading me, so I just hope it's somewhere good.
Right.
And which it was, fortunately, right?
Absolutely.
So then it's just we're trading you to Vegas, all this and that. And it's just I think at this point it was 6 or 7 p.m. and we were about to go to dinner with some of the guys and their dads. There's 7 or 8 of us. So they're like, Vegas will call you, with the details. So we go to dinner just to basically at this point I'm getting calls from my agent. My wife's in Pittsburgh. So had to call her, obviously, let her know.
Oh, yeah.
It's just kind of like a whirlwind of stuff. And, so basically just went to dinner, said bye to some of the guys. And then 3 hours later, I was on a flight to Vegas. And then I got in at like 2 a.m. and then was at the rink 8 a.m. the next day, like meeting everyone and trying to go through that. And I think that was, the guys, like everyone in Vegas was awesome. Like really close group of guys, very welcoming, great staff, like everything was awesome. I think like the good thing about it now is like, I think I would have handled it a little bit differently. I think I was just such a whirlwind and shock. And, we're in Tampa and I'm trying to figure out like, is my dad going to fly with me? Is like, where's he going to go? All this stuff. So I think like when I got there, I was maybe a little bit, like obviously way out of my comfort zone, a little timid. Like I didn't really know any of the guys. Like I played with Phil for a couple months, like that first time, my first year in Pittsburgh. So I knew him a little bit, but not super well. So I didn't really know anyone super well. So I think like if I were to go through it again, like that prepared me well for going forward, for the future. Like obviously this year going into a new team where I don't know a lot of guys. So it was a great learning experience. And obviously, in the end, it worked out pretty well.
So at the trade deadline, sorry, JC, at the trade deadline, teams are typically loading up, trying to shore up some weaknesses that they have, and hopefully going to take them on a nice run in the playoffs. So what role do you think you took over in Vegas? What were they looking for from you?
Yeah, I think probably a fairly similar role I was playing in Pittsburgh. Some penalty killing, which I didn't end up doing that much there, but a little bit to start. And they had quite a few injuries, especially when I first got there. So just kind of some depth at the center position, play fourth line. Just defend well, play well, face offs, kind of like little details like that, which is a lot of what I was already doing in Pittsburgh, which was kind of my role. So that was kind of the main thing, but yeah, just kind of step in there. It was a bit tough. I was like, I hadn't been on a new team in a couple years. So it was kind of a refresher on that, just like, systems, the routine. I remember like even just like showing up to the rink, like, okay, like in Pittsburgh, it was like, everything's like very organized. Everyone has their own parking spot. Everyone has their own routine. Whether it's like the soccer warm up before the game, there's like certain things that happen at different time. That's almost like just the general kind of, but in Vegas, it was completely different. Like, the spots on the bus, on the plane, like in Pittsburgh, it was very, everyone had their spot. So now I'm like, okay, where's my spot? Like the warm up before the game, like Pittsburgh is like, everything's like a very specific order. Like if I think back on it now, I basically know exactly where each guy is going to be at what point, like if you ever saw like Sid's 1000th game or Gino's 1000th game where we all did like Sid was like every time the skates, Gino does a stretch, like it's like very regimented. So like going into Vegas, I was like, okay, like where do I go now? Like it's all completely different. So it was just hard because you're constantly thinking of like, I don't like, where am I going? What am I doing? What order am I going out on the ice? So that was kind of something new that I hadn't to deal with in a while. But yeah.
We haven't discussed, listeners haven't heard, what position do you play and how did you end up in that position?
Yeah, so I play center. I'm not sure how I ended up there. I from when I was little, I think I always just kind of played there and haven't really wavered too much from it. Yeah.
Always been the place that you've been able to go to, that you've been able to gravitate to. But you said, you were a fourth line center, but I think I got your statistics right. You were winning more than 50% of your faceoffs. So obviously you brought a little bit to the table to a team that had a cup run at the time. So they must have seen a little bit in that you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that's another skill that kind of over time that I've had to work at a lot. I think not sure the exact numbers, but I think roughly my first year in the league, I was at like 46%. And each year it was like a slight improvement. And actually someone who helped me a lot with that was Matt Cullen, who I was fortunate enough to play with his last year a little bit in Pittsburgh. And he assisted me on my first goal. And then after he worked with Pittsburgh as like a player development. So he came out for training camp and we just talked a lot and worked a lot on faceoffs. And I think like, obviously he's a great guy, very relatable. I knew him a little bit from playing with him, so I was very comfortable with him. But also, he's also a lefty like me. He's similar size. He played a similar role at times in his career that I was kind of playing at the time. So it was just like very easy to learn from him. So a lot of the stuff's about like from faceoffs, like my improvement is like down to basically him being willing to work with me and share some insights and all that. So
when you went into the faceoff circle and you looked up, who was the guy you didn't want to see there?
I mean, there's a lot of those guys even now.
Hey.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my first year, when probably maybe the only time I played against him, but I remember Joe Thornton, like he just looked so big and just like so overbearing, and he was like so much stronger than me that I didn't even have a chance. Like I don't even think he tried against me, but I couldn't, But the big beard, and it was like right at the end of his career.
Grizzly bear.
Yeah, but I remember he just like snapped it back against me like it was nothing. And I remember like different times in my career, like when I first came to Wilkes-Barre, we were playing against Providence and they had like Max Talbot at the time. Oh, sure. And it's like, it's a guy who had been in the league for a while. He's obviously pretty iconic in Pittsburgh as far as, scoring those against Detroit, those 2 goals in the Game 7. And that was like the first time you're really going up against guys that you kind of grew up like watching on TV. And it's just like a little weird. It took me like maybe a second or two to adjust to that. And then, there's always those guys, that you go up against. But
so you had a goal as a kid. You wanted to make the NHL. And of course, hopefully there's a chance you get to win that Stanley Cup. You've made the NHL. You won the Stanley Cup. Is it everything you dreamed of?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was yes and no. Like no, in the sense that probably right. You dream of like having it under different circumstances. When you're playing in the backyard or whatever, it's always like you're scoring the Game 7 overtime winner, and like when we won in Vegas at the time, like I wasn't playing in the finals or anything like that. So in that sense, I guess no. But I mean, on the other hand, it's like I was so fortunate to be a part of that team and go on that run with those guys. And there's a lot of incredible players that never get that chance. So I think I could look at it different ways, but I think we chose to look at it as to embrace it and enjoy it and make the most of it, this whole summer kind of. So, as far as like lifting it up and being part of that experience and just that, the camaraderie. And I think, that speaks a lot of the guys that are in Vegas and how welcoming they were, that it wasn't really, when we went on that run, it's like when I wasn't playing, guys made it feel like I was just as much a part of it as guys that were in the lineup. And then when I got put in the lineup, the guy that got taken out, whose spot I took, was very supportive and encouraging of me. So I had to, when I got taken back out, it's like I had to be that to him. And I think that's kind of a big part of like why they had so much success, is that kind of like that mentality in the group and that support of one another. And it was, it was pretty exciting. Obviously I was pretty nervous like to lift it up, and then the experience of just the next couple days after that, and having fun with the guys, and then bringing it back home was special as well. So
what was that like, your day with the cup? What did you do?
Yeah.
And does it feel heavy, or does it just feel like a feather?
No, I would say it feels heavier than I expected, honestly.
You don't get to practice that, do you?
No. But yeah, on the day with the cup, we got it around 11 in the morning, and we brought it to my parents' house and had some family and friends over there, and just kind of like, it's obviously pretty much everyone's seeing it for the first time. So people are taking pictures, just looking at it, checking out the names. That's kind of one of the coolest part, is like, especially like seeing people's reaction to it. Especially people like, that are just like, you're walking down the street with it or whatever, and someone, just happens to walk by, and it's almost like, can't believe that, it's right in front of them. But yeah, so we had it at my parents' house. We ate borscht out of it, that my grandma made. Yeah, so
sweet.
Yeah, we had it there. Then we took it. We actually had five of my friends from here, a couple guys I played with at Shattuck, a couple guys at Mankato came out with us. So we had a limo. So then we took a limo and then brought it to my dad's work. So that was, I don't want to say like his time kind of, but a little bit. Yeah. And then we had an event in the old town in Riga just for the public and kids and fans to kind of see it and take pictures with it. And then after, we took it to the beach and just had it at a restaurant there, and kind of like a private get together with family and friends and different people. I think we ended up with like 70 to 80 people. So nothing too crazy, but it was a lot of fun.
You didn't go like surfing or anything with it?
No, nothing that crazy. Yeah. Maybe next time. Yeah.
I like the attitude next time.
Yeah.
Now you have a plan. You know what it's like.
Right. Exactly. Now you can kind of piece together, you have the experience. So maybe, if other stuff comes up that I'd like to do with it, which is maybe, I don't really have a chance to get out much, but if we could go, I love like boating and wakeboarding and surfing and all this kind of stuff. So that's something I like to do with it, but just have to have access to a boat first. So
yeah.
It's cool to hear that you brought it back to your hometown and you shared it with the people that are most important to you and the people that supported you all the way up. And you hear those stories a lot when you read about the guys and their day with the cup. And I just think that's so cool that those people, then they feel like, hey, I had a part in Teddy winning that cup, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you look back, like there's so many people that have like shaped who I am and helped me get here, right? It's like from obviously the obvious ones are like family, my parents and my brother and my grandma and this and that, but then it's like all my teammates from Shattuck to Mankato to Wilkes-Barre, guys in Pittsburgh, like coaches, different, like my godfather, we're close with him, my brother and I. So just all the family friends, like aunts and uncles, and that have, that might have nothing to do with like hockey necessarily, but you learn life lessons from, or you have different experiences with that, really help shape you. Obviously, my wife, like her family, so you could go on and on. So I think it was really cool to share it with all those people, especially people that, maybe I don't get to see as much, obviously living over here now, but that was one of the best parts.
Cool.
You've had the opportunity to have Sidney Crosby as a leader, and although it's a short period of time in Vegas with Stone, what are some of the similarities and what are some of the differences between these two great leaders?
Yeah, I think the differences was in Vegas. It was more like leadership as a group. There was more guys that were kind of, like Alec Martinez, Petrangelo, Jack Eichel, Stoney, obviously Brain McNabb, like all these guys that were kind of would speak up at different times and be, kind of fill that role like together almost. Pittsburgh, like Sid's not a guy that's gonna stand up and say stuff or very often. So I think, the difference is he's so accomplished that I think guys don't want to overstep that sometimes. So it's more, more him kind of driving the bus in that sense and a lot of the decision making, versus in Vegas, it was more kind of like a group of guys. But I think like the similarities is like, they're both like Stoney and said, they're both willing to take the responsibility and they have to bear that on their shoulders. Like in Pittsburgh, it's like when, obviously when things are going well, it's great. But then when things aren't going well, all the media after the game, there's like 20 people just surrounding Sid and being, why is the power play not working? What's wrong with this? Why is Sully not good enough coach anymore? And he's got to answer for all that, right? And like I think he's great at just being honest and just like taking responsibility on himself, even maybe not always fair, but he's puts it on himself, like I got to be better, I got to do this, and always protect his teammate and always protects the coaches and kind of bears that on his shoulders. And I think that's obviously really hard to do, because that's a lot harder to handle than when things are going well.
Right. We talked about when you go to the face-off circle, you're looking up, who don't you want to see? You got the puck. It's a beautiful feed to you. Center ice, you look up, there's 1D in front of you. Between you and the goalie, Who isn't that guy you want to see? Who
There's a lot of guys. Yeah.
His buddy from Latvia.
I don't know that going one-on-one like that is my strength. I'd probably just pull up and wait for someone to help, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't change.
Okay.
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. As far as defending, I would say one-on-one, that's tough. The guy that stands out was hard to play against was Carlson. Going into forecheck, it's like he's just a step ahead. It's so hard. When he's walking the blue line in the offensive zone, he's so good and so smooth that it's really hard to cover, and he makes you look stupid a lot. I think a guy I actually wouldn't want to go against would be Tanger, Chris Letang. I think he's very, very underrated, and actually one of the best players that I've seen up close, and I was fortunate enough to see him up close a lot. And I think for whatever reason, he gets looked over for not sure why, but he produces the points. He's great offensively, but he's undercover, very, very, very competitive, and he plays hard and he plays with an edge, and he's physical. And even in practice, it's like if he gets beat one time, he's not getting beat again, and he's not afraid. He can be, he can play tough and he can play physical, and he's just very, very smart and moves really well. So he's a tough one to actually play against. Like in practice, if you're going against him, it's like, you're lucky if you get, whatever 2-on-1 or 3-on-2s. If you can get a pass by him once, that's pretty good.
You're happy.
Yeah. Because it's not going to happen twice in a row, So,
All right.
So Teddy, we met you after a game in the Beauty League in Edina this summer. Do you train in Minnesota in the off season?
Yeah, we do. So pretty much since I turned pro, when I was at Mankato, we had to be at school in the summer for like a month and a half or whatever the summer semester schedule was. So, I started kind of coming back to Minnesota, and we were there. And then when I turned pro, just through my agents and stuff, you get to know people around here, trainers and skills coaches and this and that. So, but it's way better equipped, way more gyms, way more access to ice compared to back home. And a lot of those guys back home that play in Europe, they're gone, mid-July pretty early. Because the season schedule is a little different. But yeah, so we started coming back here, and my wife and I both spent a lot of time in Minnesota growing up, so we love being back here. We have got a lot of friends. Both of our brothers live here, so it's just kind of a great spot as far as the hockey stuff. Like, we got some family here, a lot of friends, awesome place to be, good weather. So
Works out well.
Works out well, yeah.
Let's talk about the transition now. Your contract expired the end of this last year. Vegas chose not to re-sign you, but you landed a good spot in Vancouver. How did you end up with Vancouver, and how do you feel about going there?
Yeah, we feel great about going there. I think going into it's like another new experience that we had this year of going through free agency, and it is just as stressful as everyone says it is. It's kind of like getting traded. It's like guys talk about it, sometimes it can be crazy or hectic, and you're like, yeah, whatever, can't be that bad, but it is. And it's like, a lot of the personal life stuff, like my wife works, so like coordinating that, as far as the trade, obviously with free agency, you're thinking about, like for me, a big thing was, somewhere where like I had, besides winning the cup, it was basically a tough year. Like I didn't have good stats, good numbers, all that. So it was like somewhere where I feel like they believe in me, and where I'd have, hopefully a good opportunity. So that was big as far as, the hockey part of it. And then obviously you're looking at the other stuff as, somewhere where we want to live, maybe potentially being close to one of our families, obviously in my case, that's not possible, but maybe close to her family. Do you have any relationships with any of the staff, coaches, management, whatever that might be helpful, any of the guys? So you kind of like weighing all these options, right? Obviously term and money plays a role as well. But yeah, by the time it all came together, we felt like Vancouver was very persistent. And at the end of the day, we just felt like really wanted there, which is a great feeling, which is what, ultimately what you want. Right. And, it all just kind of lined up with what we were looking for. And, the way everything went down is, I think we feel great about going there, and obviously a new chapter, a new challenge. So, should be good.
Well, I'm kind of wondering about Vegas because obviously if they traded for you, you were the reason they won the cup, right?
Well, they traded for a couple other guys, so I don't know. I don't know if I can take that.
Okay. We'll put you at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Though. How does that sound?
Yeah, well,
right.
yeah, thank you.
But you're right. You feel comfortable because if Vancouver really wanted you, it makes you feel a little bit more at home. And when you sit down and think about it, you've got a family, your wife, you want to look out for what's best for you. And your contract was signed and we wish you the best for that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So I was reading an article and I read that your coach, Rick Tocchet, that'll be an interesting guy to play for. I imagine he was pretty much of a tough guy when he was playing, so that should be good. But he said the guys they picked up, and obviously you're in there, they needed to get better defensively and on the penalty kill, and that just seems to be right up your alley. Yeah.
I think that's kind of been a big part of my game, and that's, like learning how to kill penalties is kind of something that I was kind of forced into, I think, in a sense of like, that's where I was put in the role in Wilkes-Barre, and they kind of said, well, you're not going to take Sid or Gino's spot in Pittsburgh, so you're going to have to play, bottom six, so you got to learn how to defend, and kind of started from there and, kind of learning. And then obviously when I got to Pittsburgh, I had to kind of be good at it to make sure I stayed up and was with the team. So that's kind of something that I carried, with me and keep developing, which has been good. But I think, for me, it's like now it's like, okay, what's the next step, right? It's like trying to add the offense and move up in the lineup and get more playing time, right? So you're always trying to grow and get better. So it's like, I found that role that I had in Pittsburgh and in Vegas a little bit of as far as like, playing defensive centered, defensive zone draws, penalty kill, this and that, which is good. But now it's like, for me, it's like kind of, trying to take that next step and evolve and add more offense in my game. And I think, the thing that I feel good about is it was basically a similar process in Wilkes-Barre where I started there. I wasn't playing very much. I was playing fourth line, a little bit of PK, then I started playing more and more. And then by the end of my time there, I was, I think the last year I was there when I was getting called up, I was leading the team in goals and playing power play and this and that. So I've done it before, obviously at a different level, but I think it gives me a little bit of confidence that knowing that I've been through this process before and that I can work my way up, and that's kind of the goal basically.
I just have one more.
No, I was going to say you got a great attitude. I mean, looking at it, great. Go ahead.
Well, he's done that progression, which is interesting. We started here and he worked his way up, and now he's in the NHL and he's starting here and he's working his way up. So I think he's proven to himself that he can do it. So I don't see any reason why he couldn't do it again.
Absolutely, and I like the thought process of the first time he lifted the cup, right? Because that means he's going to win it.
That's right. Yeah. So Teddy, I just have a question for you. You came over here to the United States, you're 15 years old. Now you're 29. So you've been here almost half your life, but you still go back and represent Latvia in international competition. That must still be a huge source of pride for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's big. I think now maybe people are starting to realize it more with, I'm sure you guys saw that when they got the bronze at the World Championships and all the fans, and it's a big deal. And like hockey growing up is probably hockey's maybe the most popular sport along with soccer. But I think the difference with hockey is like compared to the world, Latvia is like somewhat competitive and, has had some success and good players. So I think hockey means a lot just to the people, and the World Championships there to the fans is that's their Stanley Cup. And especially when they co-hosted it like they did last spring, it's a big deal. So I think, like the national team, I still love going back. I don't probably get to do it as often as I'd like, but it's still feel a sense of home when I do go back, and even just like feeling, like there's some different in the air, like that kind of feeling when I go back, which is nice. So for sure, great source of pride, and it means a lot to the community and the country and the people. So it's a different environment, but I mean, those playing in front of those fans is awesome.
I got one last question for you, and that's give us an idea of what your off-season workouts are like. What do you do to keep prepared for the next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last couple of years, I've tinkered with it a little bit, but for the most part, it's a couple of weeks off after the 2-3 weeks off, and then start slowly getting back into it. I think that I've worked with a couple of different guys and who have been great, but it's kind of trying to fine tune and find that kind of balance of, I think early on in my professional career, I was maybe doing a little bit too much, and I was training and skating, and I'm doing yoga and Pilates and all these different things that my mindset was like, I'm going to do, more than all the other guys. But I think, and realistically, I don't know if that's always beneficial. So I think at this point, where I'm at with my age and stuff, you try to think a little bit about longevity and just trying to, keep the body healthy. So obviously that's kind of the priorities. Make sure, you're feeling good at the start of summer. You got all your, like, if you're battling any injuries and stuff, you're completely healed and ready to go. And then trying to ramp up from there, and obviously train hard, but very specific to what you need in the gym. And that hasn't been like the last couple of years, probably toned down like the weights and kind of gotten away from like the traditional like bench and squat type workouts, and more some work as far as like short little sprints, little a lot of jumping with like weight vests and things like that, and then focused a lot on mobility and making sure, like my hips and groins are good, and so that stuff doesn't flare up during the year, trying to kind of foolproof yourself as much as you can that way. And then, on the ice, there's obviously no shortage of ice around here. So personally, I just mix it up a lot, like maybe scrimmage once or twice a week, maybe some skill work with, a skills coach once or twice a week. And then as the summer progresses, beauty league, obviously, you maybe start out skating 2-3 times a week, and then obviously work your way up to 5 by the end of summer. So it's kind of a progression, but yeah, so it's something like that these days.
So you're not sitting around bored at all, are you?
No, definitely not sitting around bored. Yeah, every year the summer feels like it's way too short, and then obviously you have seeing families travel a little bit, and then you got some weddings mixed in there and different things. So by the end of it, it goes by pretty quick, unfortunately. So
any time you and your wife just want to go away for a week and turn off the phones and the TV and just say, screw the world, we need this alone time?
Yeah, we do. And we've been fortunate enough the last couple of years that we've been able to take a trip like that after the season, and kind of get away and just a little bit of a reset. But yeah.
Teddy?
Oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
We were very well entertained, and you've got a great story, and we truly appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk to us.
I can't wait to watch the Vancouver Canucks this year. That'll be fun.
For sure. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was fun to talk to you guys.
Oh, appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to leave us a little bit of a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever it is on your social media platforms. A little comment always helps us keep us in the game. Mogi? And
again, a huge thank you to Teddy Blueger, our special guest, and as well with our audience. And please remember our sponsors for this podcast. Say hi to Pat at Riverside Bike and Skate and Troy Berg at Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Follow us on your favorite social media platforms as well as YouTube. And remember, folks, until next time, keep your head on a swivel and stay on your inside edges. Be a brother.